All right, everyone. We just got word this morning that Dick Cheney is finally in hell. Yes, indeed. He has finally croaked. Apparently died in his sleep, I guess. So it wasn't maybe the kind of death that he may have deserved for his warmongering and insanity and evil. Dick Cheney basically was the cover for the Bush administration. So, and there's a reason why George W. comes out and says, he was a great guy. Yeah, madness loves good company, I suppose. Bush was the one calling the shots, but he play acted a retard, basically, and Dick Cheney was always the foil for this. The idea was that you had this relatively, sort of a Darth Vader-esque or Palpatine-esque individual who was the cover to draw fire so that people couldn't criticize the Bush administration as much because really they figured that Dick Cheney was the one actually calling the shots. So basically, he was really, really great at acting too. Basically, it's a good cop, bad cop routine more than anything else. But they were both bad cops to begin with. That's what Dick Cheney led to. Yeah, only hundreds of thousands of deaths and the overthrow of several countries, which now have effectively collapsed. I mean, when the Iraq War is relatively successful compared to the other shit that you're doing, that's probably not great. That's not necessarily something that you want to put in your resume when you're getting hired for a job. By the way, he managed to make it to 84 years old, which is inexplicable considering the fact that his heart was so full of scars that it had to be replaced about a decade and a half ago or thereabouts. And it was, at the time, it's like, why are you bothering wasting a heart on this dude? Because it's just going to shrivel up anyway because, he never had a heart to begin with. Dick Cheney is responsible, in part, for all of the many, many problems that happened under the Bush administration. And more than that, but that would be one of the most major aspects. For instance, attempts to censor Americans after 9/11, attempts to spy on Americans, getting the ball rolling on the nouveau wave of censorship and spying alone basically is a disqualification for calling him a good person. Dick Cheney was also calculated and cunning. Now, don't think that W wasn't also, and W was the one effectively calling the shots. But W needed a foil. He needed someone to look dark and evil because they're filled with darkness and evilness, in order to sort of shelter him in his various political meanderings. Foreign policy under that administration was abysmal. It was abhorrent. The war escalated out of control. Much like with Obama, you had a great deal of mission creep. I just call them Bush-Obama anyway because the two administrations sort of run together. Keep in mind the people that were involved in them. By the way, towards the end, Dick Cheney became a severe TDS sufferer, ended up basically supporting Kamala Harris, actually, and then was rambling about the GOP has lost its soul. Well, you never had a soul. How can it lose it? And GOP is much improved now that it's become more populistic. It's still got a ways to go, but it's certainly better than it was under the Bush-Obama years. And the Republican Party, by the way, under leadership like people like Cheney, was ineffective anyway. It makes absolutely no sense. Let's say that you're an old school like RINO conservative. Okay, that's fine. You're wrong, but you can be whatever you want to be. Use your imagination, kids. But when you are ineffective at actually even pushing that particular agenda, you're just handing fodder to something that's arguably even worse, namely at that particular time, neoliberal movements. Now, we've got communist movements instead to deal with, like with Mamdani, but I'm surprised. I don't know. Dick Cheney probably would have endorsed Mamdani too, simply to spite Cuomo for being endorsed by Donald Trump. This is the kind of weird football team mentality that you get. So I am not going to be shedding any tears for Dick Cheney. And his daughter is also off kilter. She doesn't know what she's talking about most of the time. I'm sure that she'll have a pity party circuit of rotating interviews and stuff like that, probably write a book about old dad or something like that. This is entirely possible. Cheney's really one of those people where it's difficult to figure out what redeeming quality he actually had. I suppose, and this is my opinion because I'm not a conservative, I suppose embracing the idea of gay rights before a lot of other Republicans comes to mind. Other than that, you don't really get a lot. Other than that, it's become, well, I mean, he's dead now, had become a wall of TDS after it was a wall of warmongering, just standing in the way, or trying to, unsuccessfully, thankfully, of the populist overhaul of the Republican Party so that it would actually be something worth voting for. Of course, today is election day. Yay! It's going to be great. Yeah, first communist mayor of New York City. Wonderful. Yeah, but Cheney, he lost it quite some time ago. And he dedicated his life to evil. So he decided to become like a Sith Lord. And a lot of people get it in reverse. They think that Cheney was the Palpatine and Bush was the Darth Vader. I think that it's the other way around. But the fact is that he still played that role. He still utilized whatever force he could muster, pun intended, for evil purposes. Were anyone's lives improved by the Bush-Obama regimes? No. No, not except for interior associates, people in, corporations or something like that. Everyone else suffered. Bush did a terrible job, and Dick Cheney did a terrible job too. There was that like one famous picture of him like leering, half hidden behind a curtain, and it's like, soon, my friend. And people thought that that was funny. I guess the only other redeeming quality is that it lends itself well to memes. I'm sure there's going to be plenty of Dick Cheney memes up today, so I'm going to enjoy looking at some of those. So, good riddance, rest in pieces. That's about all. Peace out.